everybody. Thank you so much for coming back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Ellie, and today I really wanted to talk to you guys about how I passed my TEAS exam with 3 weeks of studying. So if you are ready, let's get started. So the very first thing I recommend you guys do after you have scheduled your TEAS exam, hopefully you've given yourself enough time to study, but if you have not, no problemo. So I actually passed my NASM course, which is a certified personal training course, and I only had after that a few weeks of studying to get in before fall started the semester for nursing school. So I really had this much time to study. Normally I would say I would recommend at least 4 to 5 to even 6 weeks, but I only had 3 weeks. So I'm going to share with you everything that I used. My puppy Foxy is going to sit here with me today, I guess, but I want to share with you guys everything I used in order to pass and get accepted to my program and get a competitive score. So if you guys are ready, here we go. Okay, the first thing and the very first thing I recommend that all you guys do is go out and buy, and I'm sure you've seen this book floating around, but go and buy this book. I got it from Barnes & Noble. It's only like 30 bucks, so it's not bad, but it is worth it, okay? There are a lot of other resources out there included with this that I recommend, and we are going to talk about those as well. But this book really gives you a overview of everything that's going to be on the test and then some. So I recommend first stop getting this book. Okay, so once you get this book, what you want to do is go through each section, even read the beginning because it does give you a lot of helpful hints when it comes to test taking. And you're going to want to read through each section. I took about 3 to 4 days just to read this entire book front to back. I'm not kidding you, front to back, okay? So this just familiarized myself with the content that would most likely be on the exam. It's overwhelming when you don't know where to even begin. So this is a very good jumping off point for you to just kind of understand where you're going with all of this. Once you have fully read this whole book, I want you to try to figure out what area you think you're going to need the most work on. So this really ultimately will depend on your history, whether you've taken college courses coming straight out of high school. It's going to make a difference if it's been 10 years since high school and you have not done any kind of college prep. So this is going to give you a guideline on where you need to begin. So find your subject, figure out what you need to work on first. Then I would take, so let's say for example it was science, A&P, biology. Take 2 to 3 days, knuckle down and study one system at a time. Okay, while you're studying, if you find any key terms, plug them into, I don't know what you guys like to use, but I prefer Quizlet. That will make your time go a little bit faster as you're reading. And it's repetitive as well, so helps you retain a little bit more. So once you have gotten through your system, you spent a few days just terms, and doing repetitive studying work, then you can reiterate everything you just learned. YouTube is amazing, especially if you need someone to teach you. If you are not a good self-learner, or if it's been years, like I said, since high school, this is going to make a big difference. So science especially, I really love Science with Susanna. She does a lot of drawing and coloring in and following along. Crash Course is also excellent. He's also a bit visual. And even Khan Academy, those 3 resources on YouTube, hands down, are amazing. Okay, so that was just one example of how you can study. Okay, so by breaking up things into sections, really focusing on that one particular area, reiterating it, and finding different ways to learn the material will also help a ton. Okay, so in a minute, I want to get into each topic individually. So there's English, science, math, reading. I was just using science as a brief example of how to actually study for it. The test in general as a whole. So in this Memetrics book, there are about 3 different practice tests that you can take, okay? And I recommend choosing the first one to just kind of prep yourself and see where you are at currently and try to understand where your weak points are. Find your weak points throughout the book. Really focus on those weak points. Okay, so before you even do any studying, take a practice test just to kind of find out where you're at. Reading is one of the topics a lot of people get scared about taking because they are worried about time. They are not good readers. They read the words but aren't processing what's being said. There are a lot of tricks that I have learned, and there are ways that you can get around all of that, okay? And I did very well on reading for my exam, and that's one of the topics that I thought I was actually going to bomb. So I was really proud of myself that I did so well. So what I did when it came to reading is there were certain questions that were set up where you did not need to read the whole passage. In which sentence is the author describing a opinion, author expressing bias, or something like that, and they will list the sentences down. If you can identify the key words in the sentence, like should, best, so on and so forth, okay, then you should be okay. I learned that. I watched Carolyn McAllister, and she is great. I recommend binge watching her videos and trying to kind of incorporate that into your study habits. Basically, there are a lot of questions on the exam that are already pretty much laid out for you, and they give you all the necessary information you need to be able to identify what the answer would be. Okay, so they make it kind of simple in that way. However, there are some passages that you really want to read through, especially when it comes to identifying the main topic or the author's tone and what kind of mood the author wants you to feel or is feeling. You really don't want to take a shortcut in that step. The other way I got through my exam was by skimming. I skimmed. If it was not a main idea, a topic, or a tone, or anything major, I was able to skim. I would answer what I felt was most appropriate, flag it, and then come back. I did that as often as I needed to. If I felt like I had to spend more than 15 or 20 seconds on that question, I was flagging it and moving on to the next one. So at the end of my reading, guys, I actually had about 26 minutes left, but I had that whole 26 minutes to really fully read those long paragraphs and answer them appropriately. And once you are past the reading section where it's giant phrases and paragraphs, it gets really much more simplified. You are then identifying which order of something happens first in a recipe or happens first in a sentence. You're trying to identify what the difference is between encyclopedias, dictionaries, thesaurus, almanacs. My other tip for that is to read the question first, and I'm sure a lot of you already know that, but read the question first. Reading the question first is going to give you a general idea of what you are supposed to be looking for, so you're not reading aimlessly. And make sure when you are reading, you are not reading aimlessly. You are processing every single word, because that is a huge time waster if you are reading paragraphs and not retaining what you just read. People run out of time on these tests because they are slow readers or they're reading the entire thing. Also, what's tempting to do when reading these questions, some of them at least, is using your own common sense, but you don't want to use your own common sense. You don't want to say, well, it makes more sense for this to be it. It sounds better. It looks better. It's got a nicer, fancier word. You don't want to use that. You want to make sure that you are verbatim reading things word for word in the passage, finding that in the question. That is what's going to be your answer. Anything other than that is probably not it. Make sure you are not trying to imply what's going on up here and putting it into the question, because they will add stuff like that where it resonates with you better, but it is not what the author is trying to portray. It is not what the passage is trying to portray. So make sure you're using exactly what is visible to you and not what you think makes the most sense up here. Really make sure you understand everything, all the concepts, and conceptualize everything that is in this book. Next is science. Science is huge. Science is so huge, okay? Science and biology, they are major major, and I cannot stress this enough to you, hone in on your studying, hone in on your science and your bio. It is so important because if you don't have these things locked down, you are not going to do well. It is such a broad and widespread topic. Let's say if you only know half of the endocrine system, chances are you're not going to do well on the whole rest of the science portion. They can legit choose the smallest, most minuscule little thing out of a whole pool, out of a whole ocean of information, okay? They can pull one little fish out of the whole ocean and throw it on your test. That is basically what the science is like. And I'm not kidding, and everyone else I'm sure will tell you the same. It is very widespread, and I don't really have any tricks for this other than watching the videos that I had mentioned earlier. It sucks because when you break down the math portion of it, it's 58 questions. They're giving you probably about 500 terms, okay, that you need to study. So when you think about it that way, you're really getting maybe 1 or 2 questions out of each system. And then the rest of it might be, you know, chemistry and periodic table and scientific method. Overstudy though, I cannot tell you to not overstudy. Overstudy your material. Main people that you should watch after you have already absorbed all that information is Khan Academy, Crash Course, and Science with Susanna. They break it down elementary, and it really just reiterates and solidifies everything that you just learned. But outside of anatomy and physiology, you do need to know your chemistry, so balancing chemical equations. You need to understand the atom, isotopes. You understand combustions and chemical reactions, how gas turns into a solid, how solid turns into a liquid, and liquid turns into a gas, so on and so forth. Protons or neutrons or electrons, how they coincide, what is a covalent bond. You need to know your steps when it comes to the scientific method as well. But again, I had a lot more questions on A and P than I did on my chemistry. Okay, with math, what I want you guys to do is practice, practice, practice makes perfect, and that is really the only way, the best way to learn math. Now, I did read through the math portion once, and that was in the beginning when I first got this book, and I never looked back because I joined a Facebook study group, and they were awesome. It's called ATI TEAS Science, but they talk about other things on there too, and I'm sure you can find a whole bunch of study groups, which I recommend joining. But people were talking about Brandon Kraft on YouTube. He's great, and I watched him. I binge watched all of his videos. He has a website. If you put it in Google, you can find all of his videos. You click on ATI TEAS, and everything is laid out very nicely for you, so you can just follow along starting from the beginning to the end. So I took this big giant dry erase board, and I would sit on my bed and I just watched his videos. I would pause it before he even started explaining whether I knew how to do the problem or not, and I would sit there and try to just figure it out on my own. It's really repetitive. With math, it's just practice, 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 and you know what? There are thousands of worksheets online, and you can literally print out anything that you need nowadays, and I did actually the best on my math portion. So I was actually very pleasantly surprised and shocked when I looked at my score after I took my test, because I did the best in math out of any other subject. So yay for me. I was so excited, and I was really nervous at that part, because if you make one number wrong or you put one number in the wrong spot, your whole equation is messed up. However, thank goodness the ATI TEAS test is all multiple choice, so if you are solving for an X or a Y and you don't know what to do, plug in one of the 4 numbers into X and Y and you're gonna get your answer. It's very simple that way. So use that to your advantage, and it saves you time. But you are gonna have to know how to find the area of a triangle, how to find an area of a circle, area of a square, the perimeter, the volume of both. You're gonna have to know what a proportion is, how to do more word problems, how to convert obviously percentages to decimals, decimals to percent, fractions to decimals, fractions to percents, percents to decimals. So make sure you are studying your equations too, and not just how to do the problem. Okay, with English, you need to know the difference between a noun, a pronoun, a verb, an adverb, an adjective. You need to know how to use a comma, when to use a semicolon. You need to know how to appropriately use a apostrophe, especially when you're trying to claim possession of something. You really need to know your sentence structure, understand your capitalization. Do not underestimate your English. There's so much more depth than you probably remember, especially if you have not taken any courses out of high school and it's been years. You really have to know how to dissect a sentence. So understand what each component of the sentence means, what it brings to the table, because literally almost every single word in the sentence adds value. You have to know the correct spelling, you have to know the correct use of a specific word. And you do have to be careful though, because it has such a smaller amount of questions, those questions can really make or break your end value of your score. So your cumulative score can suffer a lot if you don't do well in your English, because there's a lot less questions. They are worth more, so you have to be careful with that. So I covered all 4 topics of the TEAS exam, but you are going to have to physically go in and take the test itself. So before you do that, make sure you are taking the practice tests that are in this book. You can go to the ATI TEAS website, you can purchase other practice tests. I recommend B and C, and I would recommend taking one practice test at least once a week. When you take your practice tests, when you are grading your own practice test, or when you get the results back online, then I would strongly recommend revisiting the questions that you had missed, really digging and diving deep into that whole topic, not just that one little bit of information, but that whole topic. The night before you take your exam, you want to get a good night's sleep. Okay, the morning of, you really want to eat a hearty breakfast, eat some brain food, so like eggs, salmon. I know salmon's not a great breakfast food, but maybe the night before. Acai berries are great, bananas are good, they're supposed to stimulate dopamine. Know where you're going to take your test, so do a dry run, like maybe the week before, around the time that you're going to be taking your exam. Drive over to the facility if you've never been there before, understand what traffic is going to be like, understand where you are supposed to be going into in the campus, so what you can bring, what you cannot bring, how early you need to get there, and I recommend getting there at least 30 minutes prior to your exam, at least. And sit in your car and review as much material as you can. Okay, skip the questions that you are having a hard time on, flag them, come back later. Okay, there will be easier questions that you will just boom, boom, boom. So get through all of those really easy ones, come back, do the hard ones, breathe, relax, don't second guess yourself. When you're reading the questions, think deeply about the questions. Don't just look at the surface for what it is. You really need to think more deeply throughout this entire test. Watch out for any small, subtle placed words that are there to trick you. Okay, and process while you are reading. So process all the words that you are taking in. Don't just read mindlessly or aimlessly. Put in the work. If you don't put in the work, you are not going to do well. You getting a good grade is going to be ultimately up to you. So you have to put in the work to get the score you want. So make sure that you are being strict with yourself. You are setting time schedules every single day for your study, zoned in to what you are supposed to be doing, and you should do very, very well. And thank you for visiting my channel. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to see more videos from me, and I will be back with you guys shortly. Again, good luck, much love, and I hope all the tips and hints that I gave to you today was of some help. So I'll see you next time.